involved in the drawing up of this voice bill or in the actual driving vehicle of this voice bill, or is it all just like Jews and white members for parliament?
Um, well, I mean, obviously, like the Jews play a leading role in all of this. I mean, there are of course Aboriginals involved, like people who claim to be Aboriginal at least, who maybe have usually like the most prominent Aboriginal activists are barely Aboriginal. Um, but yeah, like the thing is, there is no Aboriginal lobby staffed by a bunch of pure blood Aboriginals that exert power and influence in Australia. That just doesn't exist.
What do you think?
So nothing
What do you
really
think
gets
they really
done.
want? What do you think this voice bill really entails? What do they really want? Why are they so keen on pushing it through? What do you
Like,
think?
why is someone like Liebler supportive of it?
Yeah, and like what is in there that he's supportive of specifically? Because when he says, "Oh, I'm quitting the front bench and becoming a backbencher because I don't agree with the Liberal Party's position. They're not supporting this voice project or voice bill, so I'm going to sit in the backbench so I can express my, dissatisfaction with that." What does he support specifically when he says, "I'm all for the introduction of this voice, Aboriginal voice, or just voice to Parliament"? I noticed they're leaving the word Aboriginal out now. Now they're just calling it a voice to Parliament. What specifically does he support? Because we don't know what this bill entails or what's written up in this bill. What do you think it is he's supporting?
Yeah, yeah.
Because
So
it's just not made clear.
recently he wrote an article in the Australian saying that Australians don't need to know the details of the voice, and they just need to kind of just support it because Aboriginals deserve to have a voice that's independent of the control of the Australian people, and Australians just need to kind of surrender that, and the details will be worked out later. Basically, like total, yeah. So but ultimately, what is his agenda? His agenda is undermining the power of white Australia, and that's why he also was instrumental, one of the key lobbyists behind the introduction of 18C, the addition to the Racial Discrimination Act, which I believe you actually got in trouble under 18C at one point, and it's affected others as well. This guy was instrumental in bringing this into existence, into fruition. And actually, when Tony Abbott, when he was prime minister, there was a push at the time because I think Andrew Bolt fell afoul of it for criticizing um, Muslims or something, and yeah, there was a push by during the Abbott years within the conservative kind of government sphere to repeal it, and the Jewish lobby were instrumental in kind of convincing them to, basically convincing them not to go through with it, with Liebler again playing a leading role. Um, and so again, like also Liebler works with
When
a
I
lot
was
of
in
other,
court, when I was in
yeah.
court, being charged with hate speech, this is a true story. Uh, about three Jews in suits, Jewish guys, came in and handed to the police prosecution a big stack of papers, spoke to them in like low voices, and the police prosecutors treated them like they were royalty, like bowing their heads. And then those Jews left, and I never saw them again. So it's almost like some Jewish legal lobby group did all of the background work behind the Department of Public Prosecutions, the DPP's case against me during that hate speech debacle, which went on for about 3.5 years. Went through the magistrate's court and then into the county court until I just literally couldn't afford to keep fighting it and just had to wear the conviction. Right. But I never forgot that. That's a true story.
Of course I did, because that's the thing. They fear nationalism in Australia because Jews are a very small percentage of the Australian population. There's only about 120,000 Jews in Australia, I think, something like that. Obviously, a country of over 25 million people. That's a very small amount of people. And if everybody else, like when the Jews first kind of started arriving here, everybody else is white. So at the end of World War II, um, around the time when Liebler's family first came to Australia, the amount of non-Aboriginal, non-white people in Australia was like 0.2% of the population, some legacy Chinamen or something left around from the gold rush. Um, and this situation was unacceptable to these Jews because the memory of the Holocaust and so on, quote unquote Holocaust, was fresh in their mind, and to prevent it from ever happening again from any kind of political organization which was opposed to their interests from forming, they had to kind of undermine the host so that the host would never see them as would never be able to form this kind of cohesive identity that would reject them and see them as outsiders within the country. And so filling the country up with non-whites, promoting all kinds of division in the country, undermining Christianity, undermining sexual norms, and creating all of these kinds of prohibitions against nationalism, prohibitions against racism, and now undermining the kind of sovereignty even of white Australia by endorsing Aboriginal sovereignty. These are all actions that kind of politically undermine our capacity to organize against their power and influence. And we're talking about a group, as I said, 120,000 Jews in this country, yet they make up like a third of the billionaires in Australia. I mean, the overrepresentation of them is crazy. They're so influential in our political system, over our media. This guy is a particularly egregious example. Why does every Australian prime minister have to care about what this guy wants? Who is he? Like,
Right.
no
Well,
one even knows who he is.
there's no other representatives for foreign